Money was never supposed to hurt people. It was meant to build, to trade, to grow. But somewhere along the line, money stopped being a tool of progress and became a weapon that can destroy economies without firing a single shot, a weapon used by governments to control, by banks to extract, and by those who understand its system, to quietly dominate everyone else who doesn't. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. You don't live in an economy. You live inside a financial battlefield. And the most powerful players aren't competing for products or ideas. They're fighting for control over money itself. Today, we're uncovering when, how, and why money became a weapon instead of a tool, and how that transformation still dictates who wins and who loses in every part of modern life. Before money was weaponized, it was honest. In ancient civilizations, Egypt, Mesopotamia, Greece, and Rome, currency had intrinsic value. Gold, silver, bronze, real metals that represented real labor, resources, and production. A gold coin meant something because it was something. If a king debased his coinage, the people could see it, weigh it, feel the difference. Money was a reflection of trust, not a creation of policy. But as empires grew, their appetites grew faster than their treasuries. Wars, expansion, and luxury demanded more spending. And soon, the rulers discovered a dangerous secret. They could create more money, without creating more value. Rome clipped its coins, mixing precious metals with cheap copper. The result? Inflation, rebellion, and collapse. By the time the Roman Empire fell, its currency had lost over 90% of its silver content. That year is the first recorded moment in history when money was turned against the people who used it. The tool of trade had become the weapon of control. Fast forward to medieval Europe. The gold coin was too heavy to carry across nations, so bankers began issuing paper notes, receipts for gold stored in their vaults. This innovation changed everything. Money became representational, not physical. And for the first time, those who issued credit, not those who made products, began to wield real power. The Medici family in Florence mastered this new art. They financed popes, kings, and wars. Their network of paper promises stretched across Europe, creating a web of influence more powerful than any army. But the real revolution came centuries later, in 1694, when the Bank of England was founded. The British government, desperate to fund a war with France, allowed private bankers to lend it money, and in return gave them the right to issue banknotes, debt-backed money. That moment changed history. Money was no longer tied to gold in a vault. It was tied to debt, and debt, unlike gold, could be created infinitely. From that point on, the more a nation borrowed, the more money existed. Debt became the engine of growth, but it also became the leash. In 1913, behind closed doors on Jekyll Island, the world's most powerful bankers and politicians met to draft what would become the Federal Reserve Act. It created a private central bank with the power to issue the U.S. dollar and control the nation's money supply. For the first time, money was detached from government accountability. Elected officials could borrow endlessly. Banks could lend recklessly. And ordinary citizens had no idea that every dollar in their pocket now came with an invisible chain: interest. The Great Depression, World War II, the Cold War, all were fueled by debt-based spending. But the real breaking point came in 1971 when President Nixon did something no nation had dared to do before. He ended the gold standard. Overnight, the U.S. dollar was no longer backed by anything physical. It became pure trust, or pure illusion. From that day forward, every government on earth could print unlimited money, and with that power came corruption, inflation, and manipulation on a global scale. Money was no longer a tool of trade. It was a geopolitical weapon. Once money became abstract, it could be used strategically, to dominate, not distribute. Weapon number 1: debt as domination. Global debt has now surpassed $315 trillion. That's over 3 times the world's total economic output, and yet the system demands more debt every year just to keep functioning. Every time a government borrows, it transfers power to those who own the debt: the central banks, the bondholders, the financial elite. The debtor becomes the servant. The creditor becomes the ruler. Weapon. 2. Inflation as theft. Inflation isn't an accident. It is a design. By printing new money, governments devalue old money. The wealthy who own assets get richer. The poor who live on cash get poorer. Since 1971, the dollar has lost over 85% of its purchasing power. In other words, the same system that claims to stabilize the economy has silently stolen value from every worker, saver, and retiree. Weapon number 3. Financial crises as cleansing fires. Every few decades, a crisis conveniently resets the board. 2008 wasn't just a banking accident. It was a transfer of power. Trillions were printed overnight to bail out institutions that created the problem, while ordinary people lost homes, jobs, and trust. That's not a failure of the system. That is the system. Each time the system cracks, we're told it can be repaired. Interest rates are cut, money is printed, bailouts are issued, and the illusion continues. But these are not solutions. They're delays, because the root problem isn't mismanagement, it's design. A debt-based monetary system must expand forever or collapse. It can't stabilize because stability means no new loans, and without loans, money ceases to exist. So governments print, banks lend, and citizens, you and I, compete to survive in a system where standing still means falling behind. The next stage of money's transformation is already here, and it's digital. Central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs, are being tested across the world. On the surface, they promise efficiency and security, but beneath that promise lies a darker possibility: total financial surveillance. Unlike cash, digital money is traceable, programmable, and controllable. If the government doesn't like what you buy, they can block the transaction. If your social score drops, your money might expire. That's not science fiction. China has already piloted it. The EU, the US, and dozens of other countries are following. Money, once a symbol of freedom and exchange, is on the verge of becoming the ultimate tool of control. A digital leash around every citizen NS neck. When money became a weapon, the battlefield moved inside every nation, every market, every pocket. And most people still don't see it, but awareness is the first defense. Takeaway number 1. Money has never been neutral. It always serves someone's interest. Ask whose. Takeaway number 2. Debt is not just an obligation. It's a form of control. Minimize it. Understand it. Question who benefits from it. Takeaway number 3. The next evolution of money, digital, centralized, programmable, could define the limits of personal freedom for generations. History has shown that every time money detaches from reality, power concentrates in fewer hands. We are watching that cycle repeat, but with higher stakes than ever before. Because the question now isn't just what money is, it's who controls it, and what they'll do once every dollar, every transaction, and every choice can be turned on or off. So, before you scroll away, remember this. Understanding money is no longer optional. It's survival. If you want more stories exposing how global finance really works, subscribe, stay curious, and never stop asking who profits when you pay the price.